Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into a topic that often feels like, well, an emotional earthquake, shaking everything to its core: divorce. For many, it's viewed as just a colossal failure, right? A
Hmm.
destructive force. But what if? What if this incredibly raw and exposed emotional experience could actually be a profound opportunity for transformation, guiding you to a place of composure, wisdom, maybe even bravery?
That's exactly right. People often get so locked into survival mode,
Yeah.
driven by fear. They struggle to see beyond the immediate pain. But what's truly powerful here is this idea that the pain itself, it can be a catalyst, pushing individuals to seek a different perspective on their situation, opening a path for, well, deep personal evolution.
Yeah. And our deep dive today draws from a powerful source proposing just that: the good karma divorce.
Hmm.
At its heart, this approach is about taking responsibility for your own actions, your own emotional responses during divorce, making sure you create positive outcomes not just for yourself, but for everyone involved, especially your children, leading to a more harmonious future. We're going to unpack how to turn negative emotions into positive actions, prevent what the source calls collateral damage, and ultimately allow you to get on with the rest of your life. So let's explore how to navigate this challenging journey, not just to survive, but, to truly thrive. Okay, so our source suggests a powerful first step in this transformative journey: creating what it calls a personal manifesto. This isn't just like basic journaling, it's about fundamentally shifting your perceptions.
And what's fascinating here is the science behind it. Neuroscientists have actually shown that the very act of writing engages different parts of your brain than just thinking alone. When you both think and write about your fears, your ideal goals, you allow your brain to process information from two distinct perspectives. It offers a fuller picture.
Right, so it sounds like there's a much deeper biological reason writing is so powerful, not just getting things off your chest. Can you unpack that science a bit more?
Absolutely. Look, cognitive neuropsychologist Dr. Leonard Miller explains that writing actually activates your prefrontal cortex. That's the bit of your brain responsible for problem solving, for analysis. And here's the really powerful part, that active engagement effectively quiets down the amygdala, which is your brain's emotional alarm center, right? Where negative emotions like fear and anxiety often take over.
Okay.
Studies have even shown that writing about emotions can improve physical health, even immune function. When you put intense feelings into words, it's like you're consciously intervening in your emotional cascade. You gain a powerful measure of control over responses that previously felt automatic, overwhelming during the divorce process.
Wow, that's a powerful idea, creating a real sanctuary for your thoughts amidst all the chaos. But for someone feeling completely overwhelmed, where do they even begin to craft something like that?
Well, the first attempt at writing your manifesto is often vividly described as dumping the poisons on the page. It's raw, unedited, an outpouring of anger, fear, sadness, even flashes of past love and self-blame might come up. The source actually provides a sample of this initial draft, showing the seething intensity of these emotions.
Right.
And it's crucial to allow yourself to recognize both the good and the bad in your past experiences with your former mate, without letting the negative completely overshadow positive memories. You're aiming for a balanced picture before your personal story becomes so negative that it actually traps you.
Okay. So for you, the listener, some powerful warm-up questions might include recalling 5 things you once treasured about your mate, or maybe writing down offenses and your own role in them, no matter how small. And if you're a parent, listing positive parenting qualities and objectively assessing where you stand.
Exactly. And once you have that initial dumping, the next step is fortifying it. Because the culture around divorce often supports aggression, doesn't it? Almost like a holy war.
Mm-hmm.
And you might find friends encouraging that with references to movies like The War of the Roses.
Yeah, that happens.
Your manifesto helps you create a kind of sacred circle around your new behavior. It's about making these micro shifts,
Mhm.
like consciously choosing to refer to your former spouse as not always accurate, instead of just calling them a liar.
Okay, that's a fascinating reframe. But for someone in the middle of intense emotion, making a micro shift like that feels, well, monumental. How does the source suggest we actually begin that practice? Beyond just knowing it's a good idea, what's the very first poppy seed someone can plant?
It's about starting incredibly small. The source emphasizes these are like little poppy seeds of change that, when consistently planted, can lead to profound transformation. The initial step is simply awareness, catching yourself before you speak or act on the old aggressive impulse, just that moment of hesitation. It's enough if that pause fosters a bit of inspiration, keeps your eye on the target of a different, more peaceful outcome.
Right. So the personal manifesto helps us recenter ourselves internally. But even with that internal work, divorce is so often synonymous with this external deluge of anger. How does our source suggest we confront this powerful, pervasive emotion?
Well, anger, at its core, serves as a self-protection mechanism. Think of it like an invisible electric fence. It signals a violation and triggers a call to action. It allows you to assert, you cannot do that to me. It's often triggered by feeling devalued, blamed, untrusted, and by very specific provocations like sexual betrayal, hidden money, or the actions of what the source calls a barracuda attorney.
Yeah. Anger certainly feels like a surge of power in the moment, almost invigorating sometimes. But is that a sustainable or healthy power? Or does our source reveal a hidden cost?
It can feel invigorating, absolutely.
Yeah.
For a time, it's described as having an amphetamine-like effect. It temporarily increases confidence and motivation, and it can prevent sadness from setting in. However, this false sense of power comes at a very, very high price. As Robert Sapolsky, author of Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, points out, when anger chemicals like cortisol flood your system for too long, they can seriously harm your body, affecting everything from your immune system to your energy levels. And
Wow.
what's more, intense anger can literally flip the switch on your brain, turning beautiful shared memories into, well, something ugly and unrecognizable, making it incredibly hard to recall any good times. It just demands too much focus and energy, twisting the natural healing process.
Okay, so given the profound negative impact anger can have on our health, our memories, what practical, actionable steps does our source offer to help us break free from that kind of intense, self-destructive energy?
It really requires a commitment to self-knowledge and wisdom over simply being right. The source encourages accepting human inconsistency, multidimensionality, meaning you shouldn't expect perfect uniformity from your former spouse or even from yourself, really. There's a suggestion for a Proustian exercise. Take 5 things that made you angry and actively come up with 2 alternative interpretations for each, asking yourself, could I be even 10% incorrect here?
That's a tough mental exercise, especially when emotions are running high.
It truly is. Other techniques include things like meditative listening, where you focus completely on what the other person is saying, breathing deeply, and actively not formulating your rebuttal while they speak, or even just physically moving, like going for a walk. That releases endorphins, which act as natural pain relievers and promote relaxation. It's all about creating crucial space between the trigger and your immediate reaction. Because the more you repeat those explosive reactions, the more you strengthen those neural pathways in your brain, literally speeding you towards that negative response next time.
hmm Beyond anger, divorce often feels like this chaotic, overwhelming blend of emotions, embarrassment, humiliation, fear, profound sadness, all spinning out of control. Our source vividly describes it as feeling like a Cuisinart with the lid off. But it also suggests these intense emotions aren't just destructive. They're like mood lighting, illuminating your path forward by showing you exactly where you need to heal and adapt.
Precisely. Every emotion, when you fully feel it, creates shifts. The key is to consciously watch yourself move through these states rather than being blindly led by them. This self-awareness. That's how you transition from being the raw material of a mental state, as the source puts it, to the sculptor of it. It's about cultivating curiosity about your new life, allowing curiosity, described beautifully as soft lyrical jazz, to conquer the loud heavy metal of fear.
Okay, but even self-pity, an emotion that's often criticized, it has value in this framework. That's a counterintuitive idea.
Absolutely. The source argues that a short interlude of self-pity actually helps you transition between a painful reality and finding self-compassion. It's presented as a place to rally from, not a mind state to skip. It can be a springboard, helping you discover what you truly want next. Now, the most powerful weapon against prolonged self-pity is gratitude, of course. But rather than just comparing yourself to the less fortunate, the source suggests accessing gratitude by being thankful for small accomplishments along your transforming path. Like new friendships you now have time for, maybe extra attention you can give your children.
Okay, but how does one ensure it remains a springboard and doesn't become a trap? What are the boundaries for that short interlude of self-pity?
Well, the source doesn't give a specific time limit, like 2 hours only. It emphasizes it's about being present with the emotion without dwelling on it indefinitely. It's a moment of acknowledgement, allowing yourself to feel the loss, and then consciously moving towards what you want next. It's the difference between saying, this hurts, and I allow myself to feel it, versus getting stuck in, I'm a victim, and nothing will ever be good again.
Right, and depression, which can feel so immobilizing for many people going through this.
Our source focuses specifically on situational depression, not clinical depression. That's an important distinction. and it reveals its most profound gift, which sounds strange, I know, but it argues depression presses you into surrender. It forces you to hit bedrock, where essential life adjustments are waiting for you. As Anis Nin wrote, the day came when the risk it took to remain tight inside the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom.
Mm.
And again, writing is such a powerful tool here. It's described as a concentrated form of thinking. New perceptions are pretty much guaranteed to emerge when you commit your thoughts to paper.
And one of the most feared aspects of divorce is often just the atmosphere of alone. How does the source approach this dread?
Yeah, while it's often dreaded, these lonely hours can actually become your greatest allies for rejuvenation. If you approach them right, you can transform your home into what the source calls an ashram, intentionally engaging in activities like journaling, cooking something nourishing, listening to educational lectures, whatever feeds your soul. It's about filling your time with purpose. You can also use this time to identify what you truly miss from your past relationships, to understand what positive qualities you want to duplicate in future connections. And vitally important, identify your community of support, those people in your life, from your inner circle to acquaintances, and understand the special value each person brings, so you know who to turn to for specific kinds of needs.
It sounds like a total redefinition of self, almost a shedding of the old skin. But is that process of stripping away identities inherently liberating? Or does it come with its own unique challenges that the source addresses?
It can definitely be both. Divorce strips away those more superficial identities like wife or breadwinner, creating what the source calls open space where illusory identity used to be. Now, this is presented as an incredible opportunity to build a deeper identity, relying on your internal essence. As Michelangelo famously said, I did not sculpt the David, I removed the stone that wasn't him. The challenge, of course, is that this stripping away process can feel incredibly destabilizing. The source specifically cautions against confusing materialism or, say, financial pursuits with this deeper quest for security. It reminds us that winning a dispute over a dining room set doesn't necessarily solve your deeper insecurities, right?
Good point. We've explored how to navigate the internal landscape, sadness, loneliness. But for many, divorce isn't just an internal battle. It often escalates into the highly adversarial and often brutal arena of the courtroom. How does our source guide us through that?
Yeah, for many, going to court means carnage in the courtroom. That's the phrase used. Our source challenges common misconceptions about what truly happens when you step into that system. One really detrimental misconception is believing that the destruction of your spouse is an acceptable means for getting what you need, or thinking that you can somehow control the direction and intensity of the flames once you light that fire. The truth is, outcomes are decided by a judge who only gets a snapshot of who you are, and you may have to deal with your adversary, your ex-spouse, for years to come, especially if there are kids. You can rehearse testimony perfectly, but witness fever, that intense pressure, can make even seemingly tight cases fall apart in court.
This adversarial system sounds incredibly difficult and unpredictable. What about the path of settlement? Is that encouraged?
Very much so. According to the source, judges genuinely appreciate compromise. It strongly encourages both parties to try and build an alliance to take back control from the judicial system. It suggests reframing settlement offers in terms of benefits to both parties. For instance, maybe allowing a father to be in charge of homework if that's emotionally significant to him, or putting disputed money into a trust for the children, something that allows everyone to be a hero.
That sounds incredibly ideal, building an alliance. But for many, that idea seems almost impossible when you're in conflict during a lawsuit. Does the source offer any practical, small steps for how parties, even in deep conflict, can begin to foster that kind of collaborative mindset?
Yes, it does. It highlights that even small, consistent gestures can make a difference. It could be as simple as responding promptly to emails, or fulfilling minor requests you can agree to, or finding one small area where both parties genuinely agree, even if it's tiny. It's about demonstrating reliability and a basic willingness to engage constructively, even if it's just on one point initially. That can be the crack in the wall, allowing maybe a little more collaboration to seep in later.
Okay. And the source delves into the often complex dynamics between initiators and resistors in a divorce. Tell us more about that.
It's a really profound insight. Initiators, that's the partner who wants the divorce, often detach emotionally earlier and are eager to move on. They might see the resistor as sort of anchoring them to the past they want to escape. The resistor, on the other hand, often feels powerless, marginalized. They may focus heavily on blame and fault-finding. Sometimes tragically, they devote substantial time and money to the divorce process simply to remain involved with the initiator, even if it's in a negative way. The source also warns about something called the bait-and-switch ploy. That's where an initiator might give false hope of reconciliation, which only intensifies the resistor's pain if it ultimately fails, making a genuine settlement much, much harder.
Right. Given all this complexity, how can people truly move forward with grace and integrity? The good karma divorce introduces this powerful concept of a civility contract. What's that about?
The civility contract is a tangible commitment. It's about designing your divorce in a way that respects and dignifies the time you spent together. It's an affirmation that your former spouse is still one of the most important people in your life, especially for your children, who will absolutely see you valuing that relationship, even post-divorce. It also serves as a remedy for guilt. The source distinguishes between good guilt, which maybe leads to a behavioral change within 10 minutes, and extended guilt, which is destructive. It erodes self-worth and keeps you attached to unfinished business. This contract helps you detach with honor.
So, what are some of the key agreements and practices within a civility contract? What does it look like in action?
Well, it involves agreements like swiftly acknowledging errors. Because the longer you wait, the more resentment builds up, right? Practicing patience, understanding that everyone learns and adjusts at their own pace, communicating what's bothering you before it festers into something huge, learning to pause arguments, call for a white flag maybe, or even ask for a redo of a conversation when you have new insight later. It also stresses reducing requests for admissions of fault, understanding that personal power has to be self-generated. You can't force it out of someone else. And powerfully, it suggests faking it till you make it with compassion, trusting that your behavior, even if forced at first, will eventually align with peace. It even suggests small things, like giving each other a weekly compliment if possible, or reminiscing briefly about a good time. It calls this an exercise in resurrection.
Wow. That leads us nicely to forgiveness, a concept often seen as just impossible in the face of deep hurt.
Yeah, and the source really emphasizes that forgiveness profoundly benefits the forgiver. It's about releasing yourself from those ruminative thoughts, the anger, the resentment that figuratively crazy glue you to the person who injured you. It's not about reconciling necessarily or even liking the person again. It's choosing to let it all go for your own liberation. The source shares a really poignant case study of a mother whose refusal to forgive her former husband kept her daughter from seeing him for 5 years. It demonstrates how unreleased anger, even if it's disguised, can figuratively clot the artery, block the flow of healing, and affect everyone around you.
So it's not just a spiritual idea then. It has a real tangible impact on your well-being and your relationships.
Absolutely. And science actually supports this. Reinforcing negative thoughts can literally enlarge certain brain maps, increasing your sensitivity to pain. Conversely, reframing anger, practicing forgiveness, creates positive bonds and triggers what's known as neuroplastic change. That's your brain's amazing ability to reorganize itself. It dissolves negative neuronal networks and upgrades your brain chemistry. Forgiveness, in this sense, quite literally redraws the neural pathways of your brain. It's described as the neurological traffic director for injuries to your psyche.
Okay, forgiveness, as you've explained, is deeply personal. But in the relational context of divorce, what about the act of apology? How does our source differentiate apologies from forgiveness, and where do they fit into this healing process?
Right, apologies are interactive and they're distinct from forgiveness. They cut the cord of responsibility in a situation that has kept you tied to the other person. This allows you to either detach more cleanly or perhaps build new, positive interactions down the line. There's often a fear, isn't there, that admitting fault makes you vulnerable or looks bad in court. However, our source, which was written by a judge, shares that apologies are actually looked upon with respect in court. And let's be honest, it's rare for one party to have zero culpability at all in a relationship breakdown.
That's a really important point. Okay, shifting gears slightly but crucially. For parents, protecting children during divorce becomes absolutely paramount. But our source reveals what it calls a compensating blind spot. What does that mean?
It means that very loving parents, with the best intentions, can unintentionally damage their children during this process. The myth that kids are so resilient is often just code for they'll get over it. But decades of research show divorce is emotionally and psychologically devastating for many children, with impacts sometimes seen even far into adulthood, things like poor relationships, substance abuse issues. Studies have even shown that 10 years after divorce, a third of couples were still fighting, continually damaging their children with that ongoing conflict.
And parents often struggle with devaluing the other parent, maybe even unconsciously.
Yes, exactly. Our source gives a very vivid name to this phenomenon, malice in Kinderland. It describes this desire to almost dissociate your spouse's cells from your child. by making a mental list of indictments against them instead of endearments. But when parents try to corrode and devalue the child's connection with the other parent, the child's own internal calibrating mechanism can get skewed. It makes it difficult for them to distinguish truth from falsehood later on.
That's scary. What are some of the other common pitfalls for parents trying to navigate this incredibly difficult time?
Well, one is children becoming caregivers. They step in to fill the vacuum left by a departing parent, acting as confidants or even surrogate spouses sometimes. This gives them a temporary sense of self-worth, sure, but it's far too great a burden, often leading to guilt and inadequacy down the line. Another is children developing a fear of conflict, because they only ever see conflict as a prelude to the disaster of their parents splitting up. They miss out on learning the crucial life skill that working through conflict can actually strengthen relationships. And then there's the devastating impact of parental abandonment, real or perceived, which can lead to deep rejection issues and really unhealthy adult relationship patterns.
So, given these serious risks, what are the heroic parenting strategies our source recommends to mitigate these impacts?
It really starts with a clear, consistent message to the children. Something like, Mom and Dad have problems with each other and cannot live together anymore. It has nothing to do with you. It is strictly between Mom and Dad. We're really sorry that this is causing you pain, but we are going to work together to help take the pain away. Beyond this fundamental message, parents must actively work to restore routines and rituals which provide stability and show continued, genuine interest in their children's activities, their lives.
Okay, that message sounds vital, but it raises a common dilemma for parents. How much truth should they actually share? What does our source reveal about the truly difficult truth regarding honesty with children during divorce?
This is a tough one. The source suggests that heroic parents must sometimes be willing to set aside some of the more damaging elements of the truth to protect their children. It even lists examples like acknowledging lies parents have told or exaggerations they've made about the other parent's bad behavior, perhaps in moments of anger. It's about recognizing that children, despite how sophisticated they might seem, are not emotionally developed enough to process certain harmful truths that could destabilize their reality and their fundamental sense of security.
That requires incredible self-awareness. And practically, how can parents manage the day-to-day interactions and protect their children's emotional well-being amidst all this?
Okay, practically. Give children private attention daily, even just a few focused minutes. And never criticize their children's emotions about the divorce. Let them feel what they feel. Importantly, never criticize, malign, or speak poorly of the other parent in front of them, ever. If parents are in a bad mood, they should explain it's not the child's fault. Our source also suggests creating a free speech zone, maybe a dedicated weekly hour, where children can say absolutely anything on their minds without criticism or retaliation. This teaches them that feelings are manageable, they're transitory. There's also something called the No Negatives Challenge, where parents consciously abstain from negative talk about the situation or the ex for a whole day, and allowing children safety phrases they can use to buffer parental negativity if it slips out. Crucially, parents should avoid burdening children with their adult worries or making them into therapists, and avoid questioning them excessively about visitations with the other parent, as that creates terrible loyalty conflicts.
Wow, there's so much there for parents. As we wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear that while divorce is undeniably painful, it's not merely a failure. Our source describes it as just the emissary delivering your opportunity to you, a perfect vehicle for personal transformation.
Yeah, what's truly powerful here, I think, is the idea that suffering itself can be an opportunity to refine behavior, to, as the source puts it, purify your karma. By engaging with these principles, you don't just overcome a crisis, you develop a new kind of mental dexterity. It opens up limitless possibilities in your life. You start to ask, okay, what new meaning might my life have now?
It really invites us to see our most difficult experiences not as dead ends, but as unexpected springboards to a richer, more intentional future. What if the very pain you experienced held the seeds of your greatest growth and purpose, fundamentally changing how you navigate challenges for the rest of your life?